So today our topic is structure and functions of cells, tissues, general patterns of structure and development of animal organs. The plan our lecture is the first question, structure and functions of cells. The second question, general patterns of structure and development of animal organs. The fundamental unit of life. What is cell? Cell is the basic structural and functional unit of living organisms. In other words, cells make up living things and carry out activities that keep a living thing alive. Cell theory. Cell theory is a collection of ideas and conclusions from many different scientists over time that describes cells and how cells operate. The first principle, all known living things are made up of one or more cells. The second, all living cells arise from pre-existing cells by division. And the third, the cell is the basic unit of structure and function in all living organisms. In this picture, you see cell theory timeline. For example, 1674, Anton van Leeuwenhoek, and 1665, Robert Cook, 1883, Robert Brown discovered nucleus, and next, Felix Jordan, Matthias Sheldon, and 1845, Carl Hendrik Braun, and other scientists. An organism that is made up of only one cell is called as unicellular organisms. For example, plants, animal, fungus, and organisms under microscope, leaf cells and muscle cells. Size of cells. Cells vary in size. Most cells are very small, microscopic. Some may be very large. The unit used to measure size of a cell is micrometer. Smallest cell and size 0.1 micrometer. Largest cell, this is largest cell, size 18 centimeter, and size of cells in humans. Shape of cells. Cells vary in shape. Variation depends mainly upon the function of cells. Some cells, like euglena and amoeba, can change their shape, but most cells have a fixed shape. And structure of cell. The detailed structure of a cell has been studied under compound microscope and electron microscope. Certain structures can be seen only under an electron microscope. The structure of a cell as seen under an electron microscope is called ultrastructure. For example, compound microscope and electron microscope. Guys, do you see and do you hear?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Animal cell. nucleus, Golgi body, and other organs. Do you know this structure of cell? Yes, we know. Yes? And
Yes.
plant cell, bacterial cell, structure of cell. If we study a cell under a microscope, we would come across three features in almost every cell: plasma membrane, nucleus, and cytoplasm. All activities inside the cell and interactions of the cell with its environment are possible due to these features. Plasma membrane, cell wall, non-living and outermost covering of a cell, for example, plants and bacteria, can be tough, rigid, and sometimes flexible, made up of cellulose and other organs, nucleus, cytoplasm, like material formed by 80% of water present between the plasma membrane and the nucleus, contains a clear liquid portion called cytosol, various particles, endoplasmatic reticulum, Golgi body formed by stacks of 5 to 8 membranous sacs. Sacs are usually flattened and are called the cisterna, has two ends. The function modifies sorts and packs materials. And Golgi body at work. Next, vacuoles, single membrane sac filled with liquid or sap, water, sugar, and ions. In animal cells, vacuoles are temporary, small in size, and few in number. In plant cells, vacuoles are large and more in number. Functions store various substances, including waste products, maintain osmotic pressure on the cell, store food particles in amoeba cells, and provide rigidity. Mitochondria. Then plastids, centrosome, cytoskeleton. And this slide is shown difference between prokaryotic cell and eukaryotic cell. In the both case, nucleus is undeveloped. No, prokaryotic cell nucleus is undeveloped, and eukaryotic cell nucleus is well developed. The second, only one chromosome is present in an eukaryotic cell. More than one chromosomes are present. Animal cell and plant cell. Animal cell generally small in size, and plant cell generally large in size. Next difference, cell wall is absent, cell wall is present, and other factors. This slide is showing list of literature for the study and link our video. Next video. Just a minute. Introduction to the cell.
You might already have some type of a notion of what a cell is. You might already realize that it is the most basic unit of life. Some would argue that maybe viruses are even a more basic unit of life, but the organisms that we consider living, like ourselves, are made up of cells, and all living organisms that we for sure consider living are made up of at least one cell. So the most basic unit of life. For example, me, this thing that's making a video right now, I'm made up of tens of trillions of these cells. Now, a common misconception is, well, these things must be small. And they indeed are very, very, very small. Some cells are on the order of 1 micrometer long. And a micrometer is 1/1,000,000th of a meter.
I'm sorry.
1,000th of a millimeter.
Video visible.
Just a minute. Demonstration and the video.
Viruses are even a more basic unit.
Thank you.
But the organisms that we consider living, like ourselves, are made up of cells, and all living organisms that we for sure consider living are made up of at least one cell. So the most basic unit of life. For example, me, this thing that's making a video right now, I'm made up of tens of trillions of these cells. Now, a common misconception is, well, these things must be small, and they indeed are very, very, very small. Some cells are on the order of 1 micrometer long, and a micrometer is 1/1,000,000th of a meter, or you can say 1,000th of a millimeter. And so when you think of something that small, sometimes there's an assumption that it must be simple. But you
Sorry, can you send here?
Yes.
could not be more wrong if you assume that a cell is simple. This right over here is a picture of a budding yeast cell. You can see that it's budding off right over here. But this just begins to show you some of the complexity of the cell itself, or of any cell. And we're in other videos, we're going to talk about different types of cells, different types of structures you'll see in some cells versus others. This right over here is a eukaryotic cell, which we will talk more about in other videos. Now, all cells have a membrane that's separated from the outside world. You see the membrane right here. This is just a cross section. You can imagine a three-dimensional version of this. So this is the cell membrane, kind of defines the cell in some way. And in general, the things inside the cell membrane is considered the cytoplasm. Cytoplasm. Sometimes you will hear the term cytosol. The cytoplasm includes not just the fluid, but also all the stuff in the fluid, while the cytosol is referring to the fluid alone. And then depending on the complexity of the cell, so this is right here, this yeast cell, this is a eukaryotic cell, which we will cover in more depth in other videos. But one of the features of a eukaryotic cell is that you will have a membrane-bound nucleus. Now you see it in this diagram right here. This is not a common feature to all cells, but the only reason why I'm mentioning it in this video is officially the cytoplasm does not include the stuff inside the nucleus. In a eukaryotic cell, that is called the nucleoplasm. We'll talk more about that in another video. Now, another feature that is common to all cells is the notion of a ribosome. And This picture is full of ribosomes. All these little dots right here, these little red dots. Let me change my pen color. All these little red dots here, these are ribosomes. And you might assume, wow, these are so small compared to this already small thing, this cell. Surely they are simple, but they're actually fairly complex RNA and protein structures that are, their main function is producing protein. Producing protein. You can see these as almost the protein factories of living organisms. They can take genetic information in the form of RNA and produce protein. And you can see this cell is full of ribosomes. So we're going to talk about different types of ribosomes in a future video. Now, another thing that is typical in most cells is genetic information. And typically, that genetic information is stored as DNA. Now, I say in most cells because it turns out that even in our own bodies, mature red blood cells don't have any DNA anymore. There's other cells that do the same thing. But in general, in order for a cell to function and replicate, it needs some genetic information, and that is stored in DNA. That's true for both prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells. Prokaryotes are ones that don't have a well-defined nucleus and membrane-bound, what we call organelles, which are these substructures of cells, which we will talk more about in other videos. In a prokaryotic cell, the DNA is just floating around in the cytoplasm, while in the eukaryotic cell, the DNA, for the most part, is inside of your nucleus, and it is part of the nucleoplasm. So I'll leave you there for now. The last thing I want you to appreciate is just the scale. As I mentioned, cells are small. This picture of a yeast cell right here, this is a micrometer on this scale. It would be about that. That would be 1 micrometer. And to put that in context, the width of a human hair, and it actually depends on your hair, whether it's soft or whether it's more like my hair and it kind of sticks up and it's thicker hair. But if this is a human hair right over here, this is a width of a human hair. This thing, its width is anywhere from 20 to 180 micrometers. My thick hair is probably closer to the 180 micrometers. So one way to think about it, you could probably take 20 or so of these yeast cells end to end. And these yeast cells, these aren't even the small cells by any stretch of the imagination. And put them end to end, 20 or 30 of these, across one human hair. And that's what's mind-blowing. Because even at that scale, you have this complexity. And even this picture doesn't do proper justice to the complexity. There's all sorts of structures inside of this that you can't even see that help transport things and move things around and give the structure of the cell. So I'll leave you there. In future videos, we'll dig a little bit more into what eukaryotic cells are, what prokaryotic cells are, how do cells move around, how do they work together.
So the lecture is over, dear students. Thank you for your attention. Have you questions?
No.
If you have no questions, we'll meet at the next lesson, okay?
Okay. Okay.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.